Hi everybody, good afternoon.
All right.
Take two. So,
Take two.
My name... I'm getting the positive sign. All right.
So we're hoping you can hear us now.
Hopefully everybody out there. Thank you for joining
Okay.
us. So this is a special webinar today. We've got Steve Sitton joining us from Market Authority. Now Market Authority is really the world leading expert on directional media. So when it comes to local search and how people are interacting, and Steve joined us for the first time about 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, we've got the largest ongoing piece of market research currently in the world today, maybe the largest in history. It's got nearly 800,000 live interviews with businesses around 11 countries, but where we've focused, the vast majority of our focus has been the United States, Australia, and Canada. So we've got a deep expertise. Nobody's done near the interviewing in Australia that we've done. Roy Morgan's done some, but not nearly to the extent in terms of the numbers, and not nearly in the very powerful, focused way. And so we're the expert here in terms of what consumers are doing here in Australia. We're about to conduct a whole bunch more research.
So it's been a really busy week, Steve.
Yeah,
You've been on the road this week, so tell us about the experience and what you've been up to.
You know, we've done 4 client events. They were amazing. We had, 50 clients and 25 and 30, and I think we saw like 110 clients over four different events. And it was amazing because they were, first of all, they were really open. And, what I was doing was just telling them the surprising story of the staying power of print and how unbelievably strong yp.com.au is. And you could just see them listening because it makes sense. It's simple and easy and obvious the way that you tell this. And so we had lots of people tell us, wow, I was going to drop print, and I'm not going to now. In the last session, there was a person with a half page and a person with a full page that had thought previously they'd just be out, and now they're coming right back because it's pretty obvious when you hear the simple reasoning behind why you would keep print.
So Steve, those amazing results have really come off the back of 3 big surprises.
Yeah.
So why don't you take the guys that are watching today through what some of those surprises are and how you got those insights?
Yeah, so there are 3 great surprises in local search or directional media. You could call them either one. Creative media is newspaper, TV, radios, Facebook, where the ad is where you hope your ad will draw a pull when they're doing something else. You try to create a desire while they're engaged in something else. But directional media is when a client is looking directly for a business. And so the 3 great surprises of directional media over the last 10, 12 years have been the advent of the smartphone. Of course, that's been a big one right there. And secondly, one that is totally, everybody would agree the advent of the smartphone has been a big surprise. The second one, though, almost nobody knows about unless you educate them. This is the rise in supremacy in the digital realm of directional media, of the internet directories. This is not something that 1 in 1,000 clients could pinpoint as one of the 3 big things, and yet it affects them every single day of their business life. And the third thing is the crazy staying power of print. We never saw print lasting in the way that it has and being as powerful as it has. And here we sit in the middle of Melbourne, and print is still a very significant dimension of directional media here, and something that business owners ought to be buying a lot more of. So
Steve, if we think about these things, so like the iPhone is only 10 years old.
Yeah.
Interestingly, on point number 2, Yellow Pages here in Australia actually had the first online version of the Yellow Pages in the world.
Yeah.
And of course, print is something that we've been doing for around 130 years. So, this is a game that we have the right to play in, right?
You do. You're the masters of the print realm in Australia. But let me just show you what's happened, and that's a great point because obviously you're the masters of the print realm in Australia, but something else is happening. You are actually the masters of the digital realm in a way that no other company can nearly match you in your markets, in the markets where you compete with local search, for example. They can't match you in the digital realm, and neither can any other player that plays in the digital realm. Here's why. Here's what we thought would happen over the 10 years looking forward from 2005. We thought, at the time, print would diminish quickly, and by 2017, 12 years later, wouldn't have much power left on the planet. Most everybody was predicting that. We were utterly wrong. At Market Authority, we saw it differently, but print has exceeded what we predicted. So the idea was search engines like Google and maybe a new player coming into the mix. Search engines would take off, and the yellow onlines of the world, nobody thought much of what would happen with those. It wasn't understood.
Yes.
Now, here's what actually did happen. Print did not decline to near the level that anybody thought. And the yellow onlines of the world have actually taken off. The strong internet directories, and in most cases in the world it's that online yellow pages, in most cases, the strong internet directory has been the recipient of most of the traffic that would have gone to the search engines because of a principle called organic draft.
Yes.
Somebody Googles it, then they jump into to Google and they end up clicking there and they come off to the online yellow. Now in Australia, yellowpages.com.au is by far the biggest player. In America, there are 2 or 3 big players. One of them is yp.com, yellowpages.com.
Before we get into the detail a little bit more, Steve, one of the reasons why people need to be aware of this, and particularly our staff, is that a lot of small businesses don't understand the value in their audience. And if they're wanting to market their businesses to an older generation, they may have thought that there was no value in the past. So there's a bit of a story to tell about that.
Yeah, so this is a really big deal. Some business owners, first of all, you get a business owner to clearly see what their target ought to be in today's world, and they'll buy print because the vast majority of categories that we're selling to here in this industry would prefer somebody 50 and over as opposed to somebody under 50 in terms of lots of the background economics. But every so often you have a business owner tell you, well, I gotta sell to younger people because I want to be in business a while, and those older people are going to die off and quit spending money.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, most of us sitting in this room, unless we get taken out by an accident, if we eat well, move well, we're going to live into the hundreds. You've been adding 2.5 months of life expectancy to your life with every year that you live since the time you were born. All of us listening
incredible to think.
have been having that. Yeah. So the vibrancy of that generation. Think about it. Back in 1967, when Paul McCartney wrote "When I'm 64," he was 25, and he chose the age 64 because that was the time of the life expectancy level. He thought, I'm going to die at 64. I'm going to be at my most decrepit. And when I'm ready to die, when I'm literally within a few months of my death, will you still love me? That was the song. And it's funny to think that in the 50s that age was 64, even into the 60s, the life expectancy was there. And now, of course, Paul McCartney's 75 now. And I just saw him in concert last couple of months ago, and he was just as vibrant and powerful as ever. And so the thing is, these spenders in their 50s, 60s, 70s are going to be vibrant, powerful spenders all the way into their 90s, and they have the money. So this is a game that's going to be played. Attracting these baby boomers and seniors is going to be very important for years and years and years to come.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the reality of what's happening today.
Yeah, okay. So let's go back to this big surprise that I have up here. And so print didn't die, and yellow online ended up taking a lot of that traffic that would have come to Google because people are Googling it and then they're ending up in yellow online. And so when you buy a position on Yellow Pages Online, your buying calls right off of Google page 1 is the upshot. That's what's actually happening.
And we see that, right? So we see that across the business, that large percentages of our actual traffic to yellowpages.com here in Australia actually comes from Google. Yeah. And that's actually something we should be playing to, right?
Yeah. So what's actually, you've got to play to this because Google is by far the most sexy, interesting, compelling thing to your customers. So we want to surf this wave. We don't want to go against the wave. When you sell print, you very much need to say print call is less expensive and way more valuable than a Google call, and you're selling against them. But when you sell yellow online, you want to sell with Google. And so 80% of the traffic of yellow online in America and yellow online in Australia and yellow online in Canada comes from Google Draft. This is what we mean by Google Draft. Somebody goes on a Google page and they click, let's say they're looking for a beauty salon. They click there on that top beauty salon. It looks like a good one to click. They click there and then they end up on the Yellow Online page. And that's called organic draft, and 80% of the traffic that you're driving through Yellow Online comes that way. Now, some of you already know that, but it never hurts to reiterate this. This is the story you want to tell to a client, okay? And so we've made a tool that is really powerful to tell this story. But before I show you that, and I think we're going to get into showing the tool,
yes.
right? Before I show you that, I do want to give you some of the background info. So when I sell Yellow Online, I want to basically tell you, look, I want to put you into a top premium position on Yellow Online, and when you get 100 calls off of it, the vast majority of those are going to come right off of Google Page 1, and for a lot less money than AdWords. So essentially, we're going to hack the first page of Google and sell you calls right off of Google for half or a third of what you'd pay if you bought AdWords off that same page.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Steve, because, I mean, we obviously sell an SEO service through the Yellow Sales business.
That's right.
And it works really effectively.
Yeah.
But there's something that's quicker and easier through this big secret.
Yeah, so it's an SEO move for your client to buy Yellow Online because most of those calls are coming right off of that page that they want, that first Google page. You want to sell them calls there first is all. Sell everything you can there, sell out the good inventory, and then move to optimization in that order. That's the big thing. So let's talk for just a second about the big secret. We call this the big secret. Reason is it's not well known in the United States. It's not well known anywhere in the world. Here is a Google page. You notice 20% of the traffic that's happening on a Google page is going to AdWords, but only 20. 33% of the traffic, the clicks and then the calls that come from a Google page are happening, going to the individual businesses, either in the maps or the lucky ones that get into that very valuable organic realm. 40% of this traffic is going to the internet directories. And about 7% is otherwise, nationals and other things like Wikipedia. The point is, the big reveal here is that the internet directories have twice the traffic that Google AdWords has itself.
Yes.
So I'm just going to tell you that when you're in a very high position, when yellowpages.com.au is occupying those first two positions in the organic, you're driving a lot more calls off that page right then than all the Google AdWords put together are driving.
And some of the data suggests that could be as high as 45%, right? People will go looking for the first organic.
First organic's 45. You put the first two together, you got about 57% of the page happening there. And so think about it, when you're controlling both of those, you're killing AdWords. You'd never get somebody as many calls off of AdWords by being there by themselves as you would putting them in a list at the top of the list with a premium placement on yp.com.au when you're in those places. And you're in those places a lot.
And page 2, Steve? What do you say about page 2?
Page 2, you got a dead body you need to hide, stick it on page 2. You can hide the whole freaking zombie apocalypse on page 3. Nobody goes to these pages in Google. So let's move on. So just to go back, these internet directories are key. We need to know what kind of traffic and where it is there. So here's the United States. YP.com, the yellowpages.com in the United States is not that strong. Yelp ends up winning, and the other, there's enough strong ones that YP is number 2, but it's in the mix. Here in Australia, we got a different scenario altogether. You are absolutely, this is Geelong, but this looks like all your markets. Look, you're absolutely the undisputed Lord and master of Google Page 1. And so we're not going to fight this. I want to surf Google's popularity, so this is what I'm going to show you. So we've developed a tool called Insight.
Yes.
And this is, it's not the most powerful way. I'm going to take a stretch here. Thousands of reps are using this in the United States right now. And the selling of YP.com in the United States, even though YP.com in the United States is weaker, has completely changed because they're able to show the power this way.
And from what I've seen this week, Steve, this is an incredible tool. This is an amazing tool that's going to make it easier for our staff.
Yeah.
So we know that today we can go manually through the organics and we see the results.
Yeah.
but this is just doing all the heavy lifting for us.
Right. You know, up to now, when you sold yp.com.au, if you were smart, you sold it through the lens of Google Organic, and you had to do all that research first, and then you get with a customer and you say, look, we're early in this category, now let's go to another one. It takes time and effort, and quite honestly, not all of you do a good job of that. The ones who are selling the most of it have done a great job of doing that research and bringing it to the client. Now we've done this for you, and we've put it in a more compelling way to see it. So here we go. This is a page of a Newcastle page. So let's say you were calling on Newcastle Auto Electric. You would make sure you had his URL typed into the system. And now Newcastle Electric shows up one time in the array of Google AdWords, of Google First Pages, I should say. Sorry, this is looking at only the organic, not the AdWords, because that's a whole different world. This is only the area under the maps and above the AdWords at the bottom. So Newcastle, the most coveted area of the Google page. Newcastle Auto shows up one time among his array of search terms where he could show up. The auto electrician is the #1 traffic search term for somebody in his business, and all the way down to the least traffic search term in 10, which is auto electricians near me. So you can see the traffic here because we've created that for you. So these are the highest traffic search terms. So notice he only shows up on mobile auto electrician in page 1, whereas yp.com.au shows up mobile auto electrician 8 different times. You show up in the search that was just desktop without the city name, the search where it came from a desktop and they typed in the city name, and you also show up in the blue ones there, the mobile search. So we've spread it out to all those different ways to search, so that they can, so that every customer gets everything they want to see available there.
So some things spring to mind for me, Steve. The first one is that if I was Newcastle Auto Electrics, how much would I need to invest in SEO to get my business to rank the equivalent of the local Yellow Pages search listings?
It's not a possibility at all. Your most powerful ranking companies in Australia sometimes will get close to how well you rank, but it is not doable to match you. I don't know if you'll ever see that happen. Insight will show you. Maybe once in a while. Maybe twice, 3 times, but I would imagine it will never happen. The Newcastle Auto Electric here they are right there, they probably are spending $1,500 a month to rank once anywhere in their top 10 search terms on those pages. They're not gonna match you. Now, if a customer is spending $2,000-3,000 a month in optimization, and it happens to be a very powerful, effective optimization program, they could show up 5 or 6 times.
Yes.
But they're not going to match you. So the idea here is, Mr. Newcastle, you've done very well to get ranked one time, and good job on that. And what we're going to do is sell you 5 search terms here, or a few more, and we're just going to splatter you all over Google page 1. And within 3 weeks or 4, whatever time it takes you to get it up there, you're going to be dragging calls right off of Google. So it happens quick. And here's the big thing. These calls are a lot less expensive than a Google call. So
it's a pretty amazing tool. We've had the training this week with the markets where we've got this tool available. So there are 10 regional markets where this tool is now available. So make sure you talk to your managers about that. But basically the other thing that isn't demonstrated on the screen though is each one of those coloured boxes, Steve, actually represents the visualization of the page. So if you click on those, what happens?
You click on one of those boxes, it'll pull up the actual Google page so you can look at it. And the customer will be highlighted in blue, and you'll be highlighted in yellow, so it's easy to hunt you down. And it essentially does everything for you. Now, it's a page that we're taking multiple snapshots a month, so it's whatever the last snapshot was you're looking at there, but it doesn't move much. And so that's going to be, also your customer now may be looking at something different because they've got their own cached stuff, their own cookies. Google essentially is showing them what they want to see. We call it they're smoking their own weed, basically, looking at their own terminal. So you need to clear that up. Look, you're looking at a lot more success on your part than actually is being seen by your customers, so Insight will show them that.
Yeah, great. So this tool is currently available and shows us the top 200 categories for Yellow Pages, and you also see the top 10 keywords that we believe would be driving traffic to those businesses.
That's right.
So even if I was in a retention channel or a saves channel here, I would be looking at some of those keywords and be telling that story, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so this is going to dramatically change the selling of yp.com.au. You're going to basically be able to fill a lot of that unfilled inventory by using this tool. There's another thing you can do, check with your managers. You can actually track where, in order of strength, where yp.com.au is strong, the strongest to the weakest in each of the markets that are in the app. So right now there's only 10 markets in the app, but we're hoping to have every single market that you have plugged in happening beginning mid-December and moving through about mid-January. You have them all.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. An amazing tool. We'll move on to the next section to talk through some other insights.
Yeah. So just a quick message on print. Before, we don't have a lot of more time in this particular segment, but I just want to remind you that print is being used a lot more than we ever thought that it would. In Newcastle, just for example, you've got 44% of the people using print. Newcastle is one of your more digital markets. If we were to go to Melbourne, that number of people who are still using print at all is going to be more like 35%. Something in that realm. 35% of people in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, a big 10 million people metro, is about the same as what Melbourne's doing here, if you want to use a comparison. So Newcastle's got 44% of the people using print, but only 6% is what people think. So that split in the actual behavior versus reality versus the perception of behavior. So the real behavior versus perception is actually extended in Australia.
And that's been probably one of the greatest insights in this recent refresh of Insight, is that perception has actually worsened.
It's worsened, right. So people haven't stopped using print very much, really. Your fall off has been 10 or 15%, but the perception fall off has been 30 or 40%. So now, of course, you know this better than anybody as a salesperson. You're having to fight, you're receiving this objection in a different way than you did before, and so we need to give you more and powerful weapon to deal with this. Yeah. So let's just move on to the next discussion. It's not really about how many people are using print. That's not really the point. You want to talk about who is using print. You win or lose this battle on whether you can clearly get your customer to see who their ideal target customer is. To the extent that you can get them clearly to see that you can help them and assist them and work with them to where they say something like, yeah, I see that. I didn't quite see it on that level before that I do now. This is what all the people that came to the half-an-hour seminars saw, just because they were sort of captive audience. And we could lay it out powerfully to them. So you're really establishing who. The number one rule of advertising for a client in today's world is to identify your highest spending customers and saturate them first. That's the big deal. So who are my highest spending customers? So, we've talked about this a lot in previous years, but I have to say, you can't talk about it too much. And if you say, yeah, I know about that, let me just say this. I would be sharpening my blade on this any way I can all the time.
Yeah, so this is not a trend, right? This is like an always question.
This is an always.
It needs to be part of what we do up front. It's not at the end of the B&A. It's one of the first things we need to do.
You need to bring this up front because look, everybody's going to have this objection, and nobody's going to understand this on the level that you want them to. So I suggest you preempt the objection by putting it on the table yourself. And how you do that is you ask a couple of simple questions. It starts with, do you mind if I just ask you a question? If a 25-year-old and a 55-year-old got you on the phone, who'd spend more money? And how much would they spend in a year, the 25 and a 55? If you can get them to go that far, that's a great one because then we establish the split. Because what we're really looking at is this person under 50 and the person over 50. and where do they want to focus their money? The number one thing they can do.
Now, Steve, I picked up on something very slight that you used then, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this more in a moment, but you used the word money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So language is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Which has been a part of the training that you've done, is making sure that we really stick to the script. This is tried and tested, right? So don't create your own deviation of how you say that. It really needs to be word for word.
Yeah, it's true. When you ask the question, never say it like, who would you rather have, somebody under 50 or over 50? That's really vague. They're gonna take you in different directions. And the point is, when you come into a sale, you need to get on a roll of having a positive joining agreement with you. So do you mind if I ask you a few questions? No, go ahead. That's one. If a 25-year-old and 55-year-old called right now, who'd spend more money? The 55-year-old, that's two. Then you're going to just walk them down the road. Yeah, the Australian Bureau of Statistics estimates that if you're a plumber, you get about 2/3 of your business revenue from people 50 and over. The reason for it is that in this market, 82% of people own homes who are 50 and over, and only 42% of people under 50 own homes. So it's very obvious that you'd have the majority of your revenue coming from those people. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that you do. You need to have your customer perspective. You need them looking through the lens of print. When they think of print, you need them to not be thinking the thing that they were. Here's the bottom line is, when somebody looks at print, it's like they were looking through this particular lens here. Print is dead, no one uses print, print's a dinosaur, I don't use print, why do you even have print, etc. That's what they think of print when they think of it. But you need to say, no. When you think of print, you need to be thinking prime customer. Where's the money? And if I think of, well, people over 50 are really my prime customers because my salesperson really helped me see the extent of that, now I'm looking for ways to target them. And quite honestly, print is the only good way in the world today to target somebody over 50 in advertising. I invite you to put all the possible ways on the table. Print is the highest return on investment way you can do it. Yeah, so you're really getting them to look at money, and you want them to be thinking of print through that particular lens.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So that gives us a few insights. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to show a clip of some of the action that's taken place this week.
Great.
So let's turn to that now.
This is one of the greatest pieces of intelligence that you can have when you think of advertising. Internet directories are the greatest driver of leads in the digital world, period. Okay, so, now to change the subject a bit. We've done a ton of research in the world, of course, with consumers. We have the biggest data bank around directional media that anybody ever has had by a long shot. But we also do a lot of research in the mind of the salesperson, in the science and dynamics and mechanics of what actually causes a person to be number one versus a person to be, at the bottom. How do you get in the top 5% versus in in the middle are in the bottom 5%. And so we've looked at this a long time. We've spent 35 years in the industry, and I've been doing science that whole time. So I want to talk about how you can jack up your the money that you're making, how you can give yourself an automatic 20% raise. And I'm going to just tell you this: what you're about to see in the next 9 minutes is a guaranteed 20% raise minimum. And if you really play these cards heavily, you're going to go through the roof. The amount that you're going to be able to make is going to be hard to express. Look at the top person in the company and think of making money on that level. And I don't care where you are, you can get there. So the thing is, you can burn at the level of, say, this fire in this trash can, or you can burn at the level of a nuclear bomb, right? So think of like the difference there. It's the difference between performing at a mediocre level and performing at a really high level. So we have a thing that we call the 3 keys. And a lot of research that we've done, especially we had a huge research project this year where we looked at the top 50 people in the world that we could find, and we dissected what they did and how they thought, etc. And we've long time had the 3 keys. We've just refined this a little bit. 3 keys to getting in that top 10%. So number 1 is to have an attitude, right, that's absolutely positive. Now, we're not talking about a person who's positive, sort of by accident. Or, Jack over there, he's a positive guy, lives, a positive life, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about wielding a positive viewpoint on your world as a weapon for your own success, about doing it on purpose, about having a purposeful strategy happening there, okay? So the top people in the world know how to do this. So we're talking about the main way that you can do this is physiologically, smile a whole lot. I challenge everybody listening to this to smile 20 times a day on purpose for the next week. That'll change your attitude. It's how you stand. It's being aware of how you're coming across physiologically. But the big way that you can upgrade the level of positivity in your life is to just upgrade the words that come out of your mouth. Because here's what happens. Our conscious mind is just a tiny bit of the reality that's happening in our entire awareness. Most of it is unconscious or subconscious. Two separate things there, but making up the vast majority of what's happening, of the processing that's happening in our minds. And so conscious mind is just a little bit. You've got storage of information and power that you have no idea about, that you're not aware of because it's unconscious. So what we can do is speak from the conscious mind into the ears, our own ears, and use that as a programming method for our unconscious mind. Salespeople need to be experts at conscious language, affirmative language, language that consents to abundance. And I say consent because what happens is people live this life where they'll say on the one side, I want to sell more. And on the other side, they'll be poisoning their selling all the time by complaining and whining about their job, complaining about salespeople, complaining about clients, complaining about the market. See, if you do that, you're never going to reach the higher echelons of it. And if you're in the higher echelons and you do a lot of complaining, quite honestly, you could do a whole lot better performance-wise. And you've got a lever now that you can pull as you listen to this. So here's what we say. The language of decrease and the language of increase is what we're talking about. Language of decrease would be reasons why I can't do it, focusing on past failures, looking sort of on the dark side. I've got a couple of people that if I call them, I can get negative really quick if I want that. And so I just don't ever call those people, and I don't have them in my life, and I don't want to bring anybody else down either. So I take it really seriously, my language that my own ears hear, that program this very powerful subconscious. And so you want to use the language of increase. This is reasons why I can. Yeah, I lost that customer yesterday, but I'm going to replace that program with somebody better. somebody that I'm going to more enjoy dealing with, and somebody that will spend more money. This is the kind of thing. We're not talking about just lying and going through life blindly, stupidly positive and not looking at the truth of things. We're talking about looking the truth in the face and then just choosing, okay, what am I going to do with this now? How am I going to choose to take what happened yesterday and use it to my benefit rather than to my decrease? And so this takes consciousness. It takes focus. And so we're going to use the language of increase all the time. So here's a little hint. If I'm about to say something negative and I catch myself, I just turn it around to the most positive way that I could say that, to consent to my own abundance, to my own wealth, to my own well-being, and to my own feeling of well-being and happiness, etc. in my life. Okay? Let's just say that I did say something negative. I want to fix that. I'm going to just turn it around and say something positive to fix it. So it's actually a great discipline to this strategy of conscious language. Okay, so the next thing is the 2 Keystone Habits. The top people in the world. So remember, number 1 is maintaining that strategy of positivity. Number 2 is 2 Keystone Habits. And these people will have habits just for the sake of it. I met with a couple of your top people the other day in Wollongong, I think. And they had habits that were done for the sake of the habit. One of the guys there calls every one of his clients every single month, especially the bigger ones, always contacts them. And he doesn't, some salespeople don't want to talk to their clients in between because you're afraid you're going to hear something negative. That is exactly the wrong thing to do. You want to add more contact to that. So this guy's one of your top people, and how he does it is by being a master of relationship. So he's got a habit to talk to all his top people every single month. Another habit is that I heard about, might have been the same guy here, is to bring a cup of coffee on the way to an appointment. Hey, I'm coming to this appointment. What can I grab you on the way? Now, that seems like it takes a lot of work, and it does. But the point is you're building long-term relationships. You can buy a renewal for next year with a cup of coffee. This is how a human being is built. You think of a human in this way, thoughtfulness like that brings more value than you think. You're out there selling, thinking that product and product value is 100% of why they're buying. It's not. It's less than 50. The truth be known. Most of it is the experience they have with you. And that can sometimes take years to really hone to get that. But the people at the top understand that this is a relationship game. So 2 Keystone Habits. You may also have a habit about how many new people you reach out to every day, because I need to sell a lot of new business in order to be at the top. Next thing would be, and the last thing we're going to talk about, is power of intention. This is simply this. You run your life by intention and by outcome. So start of the day on Monday, I'm going to stay in all day and make my appointments. That's the best way to do it. Don't take appointments on Monday. I need to come out of this with 17 appointments this week. I've only got 5 that came through from last week. So that means I've got to create 12 today. My outcome is by 3:30 I've got 12 appointments. And then I'm going to do some prep, and I'm going to be done by 5 or 5:30, and I'm going to keep that evening to myself. This week then, at the end of the day on Monday, you see how many appointments you have, and you make a clear outcome. Not a goal, that's not a great word. Outcome is a better word. Make a clear outcome to what you're doing in the whole week. All right, look, I can see 5,000 of sales monthly, but I'm going to stretch to 7. That's my outcome for this week. The salespeople that live their lives that way, that create outcome all the time, that do everything by outcome and intention, stated outcome, they end up selling a lot more than the ones that don't do that. So those are the 3 big, powerful keys. To the extent that you have not been doing these, I invite you to take them on and to upgrade your performance in these ways, and there's a guaranteed raise in it for you. So.
For the last 40 years, I become #1 because of one simple reason. I was in the cover of the Yellow Pages, and I was in every classification. So I actually invest into the Yellow Pages for a long time. Now it's Yellow Pages online, And now the census company is bringing me to the next era, the digital era that is important for all of us to go to, because people want to find you on the yellow pages. So do edr.com.au and I push the button, they get me directly, and that's because of Census putting me where I am today. Thank you, Census. Thank you very much.
So what we're going to talk about now, Steve, are some of the objections that people come up against.
Yeah.
And actually, let's get you to tell a story, right? So 3 years ago when you came here, one of the things that you spoke about was authority, right? And there was an accident story that you spoke about.
Yeah.
Could you touch on that story for us?
You know, first of all, when we picked the name Market Authority back in 2008, we were really clear that the main thing we were going to do is bring power of authority to the sales reps that we trained. Mm-hmm. And I was at an accident scene some years ago, and some of you heard this probably from me at the time. I was coming over a hill, and a truck in front of me was going through a green light. Car came through, then slammed into that truck, and the truck flipped over a couple of times and landed on its head. And the car that hit the truck hit him at 50 miles an hour and ended up going into, that's 75 kilometers, ended up going into a telephone pole. I thought I had two dead people in my hands. I got out, called the emergency, got out, and went to the truck that was upside down and leaking a lot of liquid. And I'm trying to get the person out of the truck, and I thought she was dead. And the person in the car started screaming, and the horn was honking. It became a crazy environment. People came to the environment, they were yelling, and somebody was saying, "Get away, it's going to blow," because of the liquid coming out of the truck, which didn't make us feel that much more comfortable about being there. And then somebody said, "Shut up, that's not helping," and all this stuff was happening. Then this young guy pulls up.
Yes.
Gets out of his car, he's got flip-flops on and shorts. And he comes out, he looks at the scene, he starts ordering people around. "You go over there, you go over there, you do this, you do that." He's about 25. And nobody knew, he didn't say, "Here's my credentials." He just came out and took charge of the scene. And honestly, all of us were very happy somebody was willing to do that. And so we all did it. For about 10 minutes, seemed like a year. We were there until emergency services came. Turned out that people walked out of the accident, walked away from it. And that was amazing because I thought they wouldn't.
Yes.
But the bottom line is, who gave that guy the authority to do that? He gave it to himself. Nobody gave it to him. And why did we follow him? Because he said so. Now, that's you. You need to go out and meet with your clients with that kind of authority because you say so. Market Authority is here to give you the tools to help you gain more and more confidence in your product, but you've got to give yourself permission to have that authority.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, Steve, for me in my role, I've spoken at probably 100 events in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's probably that particular story that gave me the confidence that we have a right to win here, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to objection handling, it's really important to preempt things.
Yeah.
So some of the common objections that we would come up against are things like nobody uses yellow pages. When should we be bringing that up in a call?
Yeah, so look, don't wait for it. There's a rule about this. Do not wait for a client to go on record. It's an ego you're talking to there. And you don't want that person to go on record. So the worst thing to say is, he says, "I'm dropping print," and you say, "Why?" You just postured yourself in a very weak position relative to that person. You don't want to ask him why. You know damn well why it is, and so does he. And to ask him why means it's like saying, "Would you further go on record with your objections so that it can be harder for me to work with you?"
Yes.
So you want to just preempt that. "Hey, before we get started, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?" We put the 25-55 that we talked about a minute ago.
Yes.
We put that up front just because, especially if somebody's got an objection and they do. But I often put it up front before I even start the call. Because, look, we're going to deal with this, so why not have the whole appointment with them looking at print through the lens of primary money customer rather than with them looking at print through that other lens? Why don't we have the print part of what we're going to talk about? Why don't we set that up right off the start? And so that's, you preempt. That's what I do.
Yeah. And I think even yellow pages online is sometimes now being put into that bucket. So
Yeah.
people are thinking nobody uses yellow, and yellow is not necessarily print or online. It's a solution, right?
Right.
So what are some of the tools, and we've spoken about some of them, that you would use from an online perspective, a yellow
Yeah.
online?
Yeah, so here's the thing. You want to, your conversation with them and the way you come to them and how much authority you have is key here. So when you're talking print, you want to get them using the lens of the ideal customer. So the questioning is the most powerful thing you can do with print. Then go to Insight, and we've got a great print module in Insight that makes selling print easier. But quite honestly, you need to have them at the questions and the intuitive discussion. When you're selling yellow online, you need them to look at yellow online, not through the lens of some online printed phone book. They need to look at yellow online through the lens of Google page 1. You're drawing calls off of Google page 1. Look, bottom line is, when you take a position on yellow online, you're buying calls right off of Google page 1 for about a third of the cost of AdWords. And so we're essentially going to hack the page. So you want them to do that.
Now, Steve, can you say that again? Because you weren't making those numbers up right. So, particularly in the US, and we see the trends follow here in Australia.
Yeah.
What are the cost comparisons that we're
Cost
seeing?
comparison in the US is about a third. Now here you may be half. Doesn't matter. Half is going to work.
Yes.
Right? The point is, I hope you're half here. You're getting more of what it's worth. But when they understand, hey, I would have spent $3,000 a month in AdWords, but I would only spend $1,000 a month in yellow online. That's backwards. I ought to hope there's inventory available for me to reverse that spend.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, another thing that we sort of come up against in all of our different channels would be, I'm not getting any business from it. Or the calls that I get from Yellow Pages are tire kickers.
Yeah.
So how can we preempt that?
Yeah, this is an old look. Back in the 90s, they used to say Yellow Pages leads aren't as good. That's because they were comparing them to referrals. Back in the 90s, you would get Yellow Page leads and referrals. That's all you would get because Yellow Pages were all there was. A lot of people stuck on that. The truth is that a Yellow Page response is more valuable than anything in Australia that you're going to get in the directional media local search line. It is the coveted one. Reason simple is that you're pulling off of an older demographic who have a high propensity to have a lot more money. It's simply playing the numbers game. So if I can get older people, I know I'm going to have people that are probably going to have more money.
So there is a bit of a reality, right? That
Right.
there's nothing sexy about the Yellow Pages,
Yeah.
but it's a bit like a shopping centre, right? Where people go there, or a grocery store.
Yeah.
You don't go in there browsing. You go because you're ready to buy something.
Sure. And you could say there's nothing sexy about Yellow Pages for your business except money and profit and return on investment. If you find those things sexy, then Yellow Pages becomes a very sexy product, right? The most sexy product out there. Bottom line is this. Even in Sydney and Melbourne, probably the highest ROI still lives in print, period. You can say that with authority, because every dollar spent falls on somebody who's older. And in Sydney and Melbourne, the focus on older people is even more pure. So that focusing, that targeting ability actually increases.
Yeah. So again, there's this opportunity in our customer conversations to preempt some of this. So in Australia, the average Australian now spends something like 25 hours per week on the internet.
Yeah.
So our minds are a little bit confused about all of that traffic and time we're spending. That's not buying. We don't spend 25
Right.
hours per week shopping,
Yeah.
right? So we've got to demystify that for our customers.
Yeah, it's all about ROI, and it's all about how many calls you get, how much those calls cost, and what is the quality of the call. And quite honestly, the only thing you have to sell that gives a significant quality upgrade is print. Now, there is a 20% quality upgrade to Yellow Online also. These are calls that are more likely to buy than AdWord calls. So your own wholly owned and operated products are performing better than AdWords in terms of quality, and they're also cheaper. So, hello. Now, when it comes to Yellow Online, I'm just going to mention that you're driving a lot more calls many times than you could through AdWords. So you're winning on all sides.
Steve, tracking is really important, and we do a lot of call tracking, and you've seen a lot of research over in the States with the big sort of directory players there as well. One of the common objections that we would come up against is it's like the test around the office. I've done a test and nobody's using it.
Right. Right.
How would you handle that one?
Bottom line is, you can't do the tests around the office. They don't know this. That methodology doesn't work. People don't admit it. And also, if I used print 3 weeks ago, I think I'm not a user of print. No, last time I used it was 3 weeks ago. We've done long studies with consumers who say, I don't use print. And then we say, when's the last time you used it? And we say, and they'll say something like 2 weeks. Well, no, that makes you a print user. You don't really use a print book more than 3 times a month at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the highest users. The truth is, the average spend through print is about $800. The average spend through AdWords is much less than that. So less usage on a daily basis. The truth is, because AdWords is only 20% of a Google page,
Yes.
in almost all your markets, print is being used a lot more than AdWords in that market. The only markets that you have where AdWord usage is higher than gross print usage, by virtue of the fact that it's only a little bit of the Google page, is Melbourne and Sydney. But even in those markets, print's a great targeting device for people 50 and over, so it actually gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess when it comes to handling objections, it's really best to try to preempt it.
Right.
And try to set the record straight, take the customer on the journey. Really important to get them acknowledging and agreeing
Right.
through that sort of storytelling at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I moved to Melbourne 3 years ago, I stopped at my mother's in Canberra and I literally walked out the front door of the house and there was raw sewage coming up from the drain.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, she turned straight to her yellow pages while she had an iPhone, an iPad, and a laptop computer sitting next to her.
Yeah.
And I took that picture, right, because often it's those moments that drive
Yeah.
the call that people just don't think about, right? So it's those emergency situations, it's those life-changing moments that drive so much usage of a directory type service, right?
Yeah, it's true. And the truth is, in Australia right now, we're about to survey the entire country. We're about to have the brand new numbers. But I'm just going to estimate that even including Sydney and Melbourne, if you mix in all the markets of Australia, you've got people over 50 choosing print 45% of the time, half the time just about, in those situations. And those are the people with the money. And print is an obvious thing to buy. And if customers, they're smart. If all you have to do is get them to engage, if you can tell this story well enough, and you're going to turn no's into yeses all day long.
Yeah. Steve, we've got a couple of minutes. Do you
Yeah.
have any closing remarks that you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, I'll just say that, if you remember a couple of years ago, we did a consumer rating of the power of companies throughout the English-speaking world. We compared you guys to the South Africans and to the English in the UK and to the Canadians and to the Americans. And we rated, I'll just say this, you've got the most powerful package to talk about between Yellow Online and print of any company in the world. This is our estimate, we're the ones that would know this. Between how well Yellow Online optimizes and how much traffic you have there. It doesn't optimize near as well in the other countries. Between how strong you are on that Google page and between how powerful print actually still is, we put those together. You've got a 1-2 punch here that is really amazing. You should be proud of this. You should stand up with authority and look your customers in the eyes and just celebrate this fact. They need to hear it, and you need to have a lot of authority in how you tell that story, and I hope that our tools are going to help you to do that.
Yeah. I think it's been an amazing week. We've heard some great stories, and you saw in some of the clips some of the wins that we've already seen this week, which is pretty amazing. So the Insights tool is now available, so please speak to your manager or the capability team, and they can certainly point you in the right direction around the Insights tool. It's available in 10 key regional markets, and we will be looking to expand that even further, which is very exciting. Just want to take the opportunity, Steve, to thank you for this week. It's been fantastic for our team.
It's always great to come here and see you.
So we're going to take a break now. So for our teams that are watching, if you want to continue on, we are going to be joined shortly by Carleen, who is going to share some of the other exciting news that we have around our Yellow brand and, of course, some of the marketing activity that's coming up shortly. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.